welcome to all of you who have taken the time out to be with us today. This is our first of the leadership seminar series, and I'll give you a brief introduction about myself and of course our guest tonight and the purpose behind this entire seminar series. So my name is Jaya, Payeri Jayashree, and also the principal investigator for the research that we are doing on women and leadership in collaboration with Dubai Business Women's Council. And my co-investigator is here with me, Professor Valerie Lindsay. Both of us, we started off this research about a year ago. We felt that there was enormous opportunity within the region to understand the complexities of how women navigate this multi-layered space when they enter into a career and as they progress towards their leadership. Some research has been done within the region which is significant, but at the same time there are tremendous opportunities to find more. And well, we approached Dr. Raja Al Ghurb from Dubai Business Women's Council and put our ideas in front of her, and then we applied to the National Research Foundation grant because again this is one of the strategic priorities of UAE. A lot of investment has gone into tertiary education and we got the grant. So that's how we started on this journey about a year ago, and since then we've had the opportunity to meet a number of outstanding women who are in the process of contributing to the economic growth of the country. We thought, why not then bring it into the public space and make it more of a dialogue with the women who are working in the corporate sector as self-employed entrepreneurs, so that there could be more voices into this whole debate on women and leadership. So let me introduce to you our guest for tonight, Hazel Nyandoro. Welcome, Hazel. Who is the founder and managing director of Manolith Consulting, a company offering strategic image development services to organizations and individuals. Based in the UAE, Manolith covers frontier markets in the Middle East, Africa and Europe. Hazel has worked on a range of projects under the Manolith banner. Between 2006 and 2015, Hazel has held several roles in the corporate and investment banking division of JP Morgan Chase, working in both London and Dubai. Her key roles included CFO for global pension funds, Investor Services Sub-Sahara, and Vice President in Treasury Services and Trade Financial Middle East, Africa and Turkey. Prior to joining JP Morgan, Hazel spent several years of her career working for the John Lewis Partnership as developing and implementing its organizational restructuring strategy. So, fantastic profile there. And aside from her blue chip management development and training programs, Hazel achieved a BSc Honours Economic and Social Policy from the University of London and has a postgraduate qualification in Personal Development from the University of Westminster. She enjoys networking and foreign travel. So, welcome to Hazel. So, Hazel, to begin our journey, you might want to share with us something about your career journey. You have been head of corporate, in a financial sector, and then you decided to step back a little bit and become self-employed, an entrepreneurial career. So how has this transition been? What are some of the enablers of this transition, or is there anything specific that you might like to share with the audience here?
I'd like to start off by saying it's such an honor and a privilege to be here tonight. I would find it really it's a powerful experience for me to be able to share my journey with such beautiful and amazing women as you all are. My career in investment banking, retail as you mentioned, has been an experiment for me, quite frankly. When I say that, I've always found that risk, the absence of fear, or just being able to navigate the space of fear when you're starting on a path in any choice of career, something that would be an enabler, as you say it. So in my case specifically, it really was thinking about what I like, thinking about what I enjoy, thinking about where I could make an impact. And more often than not, it was in spaces where women aren't traditionally welcome. Note. As a person who is motivated by challenge and motivated by, I guess, bucking the trend, I would say it was actually quite easy for me to identify where I wanted to be in that respect. at the point that you get in, you start navigating how you make an impact. Whether you're going to be rejected or not is a real concern. In some cases, that was the case, but then it's how quickly you turn that around. So my experience has been, okay, you don't like me for whatever reason. I don't typically go to because I'm a woman first, because I like to believe that leadership is a genderless concept. Is it because I'm black, which is a real factor when you work in the East, in the West, and in fact when you work outside of Africa. But then again, stereotypes, which I fight against with every single ounce of my being, because I refuse to accept that we do not have a legitimate place in this world, given how much we contribute towards it. Okay. In short.
Fantastic. You use the word influence. What exactly do you mean by that? Now, would you say that in your own path towards navigating your career, you said that you're constantly challenging the kind of barriers, the potential barriers that you might have faced being black and being a woman in the financial sector, which is largely male dominated. What about what are the individual factors that helped you in fighting those external voices and also some of the voices in your own head? Because as we are growing up, we are all listening to some messages from, within the environment that a male can do this and a female should do this, and somewhere along the line it also gets internalized within our own self. So would you say that that played a role in your life as well, or perhaps your socialization was such that the voices in your head were always very empowering? What would you say to that?
I think to answer that, to give any justice to your question, I'll start off by giving you a bit of background about how I grew up. So I am a Zimbabwean, born in the UK, but spent very many years in Zimbabwe, which is in southern Africa. I could take it even further and say my mother tells me that from the time I was in her womb, I was dictating what she ate and when. But coming out of that, really, I think, below the age of 12, my first responsibility was being made a school prefect in my primary school. At that point, you don't really notice gender. The extent of your responsibility is making sure that there's no litter in the playground and people are standing in line and going to class on time. So that was a very easy kind of introduction to responsibility outside the family, outside the home. Take it a step further. At the age of 16, I'm then appointed as junior deputy mayor for the city of Harare, which is literally a junior, if you like, a mirror of the city council. That was my first heartbreak around what leadership meant, because a guy was made mayor who I felt I was much more qualified for the role than, but nobody had ever heard of a female junior mayor before. These are my peers nominating us, so I found that gravely disappointing. And that's when I guess that trigger went off in my mind that actually, no, this is unjust. I do not like injustice, so how do I prevent this from ever happening again? The only limiting factor that I've discovered is me. I'm the only person who can prevent myself from breaking through glass ceilings. I'm the only person who can, prevent myself from achieving a vision, for realizing dreams. And I think that's true for most women that I've interacted with, where there's this real fear for the unknown and this real reticence to dive in the deep end, which is very different to my male counterparts.
So do you mean the imposter syndrome? Do you feel like an imposter? Have you ever felt like an imposter?
I feel like one right now. I say that, a little tongue cheek. Imposter insofar as when you've picked up that my career has been a little bit all over the place. I've gone from retail into banking, into food and beverage now, consulting. The first time I've walked into any one of those industries, I've felt like an imposter, because I've very quickly been given a lot of responsibility that I don't think that I've earned, which is a very different mindset, once again, to my male counterparts who have that I can do anything mentality. But I've always given myself a very short window to allow me to wallow in that space, because it is quite self-destructive. So yes, actually I'm here for a reason, and the fact that you've trusted me with this job must mean you see something that I may not see yet, but I'm willing to explore that.
So continuously you seem to have challenged your own assumptions and those of the others by taking certain conscious steps towards making sure that you're reaching where you want to reach in a focused way. What are, according to you, what are some of the ways in which one can effectively engage with the workplace?
I think authenticity is going to be your strongest asset. If you can walk into the workplace and be true to yourself, I think you've won half the battle. People can pick out fakeness quite quickly. I've also found just being honest about what I know has been helpful as well. So I'm not afraid to say I do not know what you're talking about, or you've asked me to do something, what does that mean? Whereas a lot of people try to save face, it's not quite clear for me. It's more about making an impact on the people that I work with. And I will always say that work with rather than that work for me, because I think that's a completely different dialogue once you embark on it. I think over and above that, if I can inspire someone to dream big, to aspire to be bigger and better, then I've done good, and I've done my bit for the economy, for the world, for another human being, however you want to phrase it.
How important is mentoring to the whole process of growing in your career?
I've worked, once again, with very, very powerful men and women, and mostly men. A lot of my female counterparts tend to gravitate towards other women, which I find it's almost counterintuitive. If you're working in a male-dominated environment, the men are the ones making decisions. You almost need to understand how they think, how they work in order to be effective in their world. So for me, my mentors were mainly male.
And how do you go about developing mentors?
You need to understand what you want to start with. So your mentor is created almost to fit your needs rather than the other way around. You've got people whose egos mean that when they're speaking with their colleagues, yes, I mentor 15,000 children from all over the world. For them, it is part of their CV, whereas you are depending on these people to guide you through your career, to guide you through your decision making, which makes it quite critical that you've got a good match. I think knowing what that person represents, knowing their value system, knowing their ethical base is all really important for that pairing exercise. You don't just pick anyone. One of my strategies, for instance, would be in a new environment. I observe my colleagues, I observe the powerhouses in that space. I start to identify characteristics that perhaps I lack. So for me, it's what do I not know how to do well, and who can teach me to bridge that gap.
Fantastic. It's very interesting what you're saying, because you are saying that at one level I have to be constantly self-aware and engage in a process of looking within, an inside-out approach, and then identify people within my own career or outside of it who can potentially build those competencies, emotional or intellectual, that I might not have, but is necessary for the kind of position that I'm aspiring for. Now, if we were to draw on this, would you say that somewhere the gender debate has been rather unidimensional? Because from what you were saying, it appears to me that while you had your communal attributes of being a woman, you said that you celebrate being a woman, but at the same time you also have those competencies which are traditionally considered male. So do you feel that we are doing disservice to this entire gender debate by looking at it as a spectrum of males are here and females are here? It appears from what you're saying that somewhere, in order to be successful in your career, or at least navigate your career successfully, you might have to develop competencies which are so much more multidimensional, and that might apply to both men and women.
Absolutely.
Well, there has been a substantial increase in women having moved towards tertiary education as compared to men, but at the same time that has not translated to women getting employed at the entry level, and even if they do, there is some kind of a leakage that happens, and lesser women reach the top. So somewhere I think the gender debate is also necessary. Why do you think there is this pipeline effect?
So anecdotally, I would say because women face completely different sets of circumstances. Parenting is one of them. The impact of parenting is going to be very different for females than it is for males. I'm a mother of two, and my career took a break at the point that I decided to venture into parenthood. My partner, on the other hand, was able to carry on soaring. I think a personal challenge I would have faced is being out of the workplace for the year that I took off for maternity leave, for instance, meant that going back, I'm almost starting to prove myself all over again. So on the one hand, for people who choose to go down the family route, that is it takes out a good 5 years from your career. Some women might choose to stay at home longer because it's a really important part of their existence and they want to be there to support their children and to be around for their formative years. But if you've missed out 8 years of your career doing that, one, your CV has almost become irrelevant. You are now competing with people, you know, the younger generation that's either just come out of the schooling system. So it becomes a very highly contested space for what you thought you were able to do, or industry has just moved on dramatically since you were last in it. So that is probably what I would consider the top factor. I think over and above that, a bit like we're talking about being a fraud, very often women wait to be validated by external forces. If it doesn't come, and often in these high-tiered roles, you're not going to get it from anybody. You almost need to push your way through. If you don't have the boldness or the strength to do that, you're going to settle for that middle-tier management, which I think is quite tragic once again.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's move a little bit into your entrepreneurial career. What are the optimal conditions you think that enables someone to transition from that corporate career to being self-employed?
Chaos.
Okay.
By that I mean there's a stability that you get spoiled with working in a corporate role. You know exactly when in the month your salary is going to hit your account. You know exactly what you're expected to do month in, month out, more often than not. At the point that you break from that, you're suddenly faced with uncertainty around, one, whether you've taken the right decision, if you've got enough money to sustain you as you go through this process. There's, you know, I've often joked about how at the point I became an entrepreneur, I became everything from the janitor to the CEO, because I didn't have a tech department to call and say, oh, my website needs updating. I had to figure out how it's all done. So a lot of things you take for granted by working in the corporate world get dispelled immediately, and you really do need to be ready to get your hands dirty and to be able to navigate that uncertainty effectively.
What advice would you give to people who would like to move into an entrepreneurial career?
I'll start off by saying understanding what you can do is a starting point. At the point that I decided to leave my role or to give up in my banking career, I spent months on end harassing my friends and asking them what I could do, what am I good at. And it sounds really elementary, but there is this soul-searching process that you go through where you really are haranguing people to maybe inspire you to understand what you need to do. The market is flooded with people with all manner of ideas. What makes your idea different? What makes your idea viable commercially? If you're filling a gap, you want to be able to very quickly identify the processes that you're going to need to, you know, take in order to fill that gap. So there are many inputs that go into this process, but the biggest one is around chaos, as I phrased it, because it is not certain. You think you figured it out, and then something happens that completely changes your course, or you're let down by people. I also would say having the right support network around you is optimum. So be it your partner, your friends, family, that support does a lot to mentally get you to the space that you need to be. I would say savings take a lot of stress off you as well. The last thing you want to do is to worry about finance when you decide to become an entrepreneur, because that's what kind of gets you running back into the corporate doors if you're not careful. And just perseverance, really.
Yes, and that again, I think that, and consistently, there's a theme that is coming up that at the end of the day, you're saying that the responsibility for making change in one's life essentially lies with you and you alone, and you have to then make sure that, you know, you create the right networks, you choose the right mentors, you identify what is it that you're good at, you have enough self-awareness so that you develop your competencies and steadfastly just move towards where you want to be.
Absolutely, and there's nothing like pressure to really kind of motivate you to get things done, at least for my personality type. The more pressurized I feel, the more results I'm likely to give.
One last question as to, what is your conceptualization of leadership? What does leadership mean to you?
I conceptualize leadership as really just being able to make a positive impact in whatever environment you're in. I may not be leading people, I might be leading resources, but I've got to be able to do that well. Awareness is also a big one. So being aware of your environment, building good, solid relationships with the people that you lead. I think it's important to be able to just legitimately claim that spot because people can see what value you add.
Mm-hmm. And how do you continue to develop your competencies?
Reading and researching, talking to people, understanding your market. I can't emphasize enough the power of knowledge, especially when you start playing in the high echelons of the corporate triangle. So really, for you to be accepted as an equal, you need to know what you're talking about. It's one thing to get in there because someone's believing you. It's another thing to prove that there's a reason that they thought you could do the job well. And I would want to be surrounded by people who equally have the same ethos. I think it's absolutely critical to the team that you work with. You don't want divisive elements in there. You don't want to have your hard work sabotaged because somebody can't be bothered to either sign up to your vision or has got a contradictory standpoint. When you enter a new environment, not everybody's going to stay with you. I think it's not being afraid to let go of the bad fruit. That's not to say you walk in and you fire people because that loyalty goes a long way and the knowledge that comes with the legacy staff base. But really just embracing what you do and enjoying it.